The silence that followed my words was deafening. Sitting around our family's mahogany dining table on Christmas Eve, I watched my brother Derek's jaw literally drop open while our mother Sarah's face drained of all color. The flickering candlelight cast shadows across their stunned expressions as the weight of what I had just said settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Derek had been in the middle of his usual boasting about winning some high-profile court case when I casually mentioned selling my company. He laughed and asked how much my worthless startup had brought in. $160 million, I said quietly. Growing up in our suburban Connecticut home, the favoritism was never subtle. Derek, 3 years older than me, was everything our mother had dreamed of in a son. 6 feet tall with perfect posture, he dominated the varsity basketball team while maintaining a 4.0 grade average. His bedroom walls displayed rows of academic achievement certificates, MVP trophies, and newspaper clippings highlighting his athletic accomplishments. Meanwhile, my room felt like a constant reminder of inadequacy. I struggled with dyslexia throughout elementary and middle school, which made reading assignments feel like climbing Mount Everest with a broken leg. While Derek effortlessly absorbed textbooks and regurgitated perfect answers, I spent hours deciphering words that seemed to dance and flip on the pages. Our mother Sarah, a former English teacher, viewed my learning difference as a personal failure rather than a challenge to overcome. During parent-teacher conferences, she would sit rigidly in the plastic chairs, her lips pressed into a thin line, as teachers explained my need for extra time on tests. Her embarrassment was palpable. She never attended my science fair presentations, where I built elaborate computer programs, but she never missed Derek's basketball games, cheering loudly from the bleachers and organizing team dinners at our house afterward. Christmas mornings were particularly painful. Derek's pile of expensive gifts always towered over mine. He received the latest gaming consoles, designer clothes, and expensive sports equipment, while I got practical items like socks, school supplies, and generic electronics from discount stores. When relatives asked about our achievements, Sarah would beam while describing Derek's latest honor roll recognition or scholarship offer, then quickly change the subject when attention turned to me. The breaking point came during my senior year of high school when I discovered something that shattered my remaining trust in my family. I'd been accepted to 3 different colleges with partial scholarships for my computer science projects despite my learning challenges. When I excitedly shared the news with extended family at our annual 4th of July barbecue, I overheard my cousin Jennifer asking my mother about my college plans. Sarah's response made my stomach drop. She told Jennifer that I had dropped out of high school and was working at a local computer repair shop instead of pursuing higher education. She painted a picture of a troubled young man who could not handle academic pressure, completely fabricating a narrative that portrayed me as a disappointment who had given up on his dreams. The lie was so elaborate and convincing that Jennifer looked at me with genuine pity when she saw me later that evening. Standing behind the garage holding a plate of untouched barbecue, I realized that my own mother had been systematically destroying my reputation within our extended family to protect her image as a perfect parent. She could not bear to admit that her learning, disabled son had actually succeeded academically, while her golden child Derek was beginning to show cracks in his perfect facade during his first year of college. Leaving for college felt like escaping from a prison where I had been serving a sentence for crimes I never committed. At the University of Massachusetts, I finally found an environment where my unique way of thinking was valued rather than seen as a defect. Computer science professors appreciated my ability to solve complex programming problems through creative approaches that other students could not conceptualize. My roommate Jake became the brother I never had. A brilliant engineering student from Oregon, he understood technology as fluently as I did and shared my vision for creating software solutions that could revolutionize how businesses operated. We spent countless late nights in our cramped dorm room, drinking energy drinks and brainstorming ideas for applications that could streamline workplace efficiency. During our junior year, we developed a prototype for case management software that could help law firms organize their client files, schedule appointments, and track billing more effectively than existing systems. The program used advanced algorithms to predict case timelines and automatically generate reports that saved lawyers hundreds of hours per month. We knew we'd created something special, but convincing anyone to take us seriously proved incredibly challenging. After graduation, Jake and I moved into his grandmother's garage in Springfield, Massachusetts. The space was barely large enough for 2 desks, a printer, and the secondhand server equipment we had purchased with our combined savings of $3,000. We lived on ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and whatever free food we could find at networking events and tech meetups. Our first 6 months were brutal. We maxed out 4 different credit cards, trying to keep our server running and our phones connected. I worked nights at a 24-hour diner to pay for basic living expenses while spending days cold calling law firms and trying to schedule product demonstrations. Most lawyers hung up immediately when they realized we were college graduates selling software from a garage rather than representatives from established companies. Family dinners during this period were exercises in public humiliation. Derek had landed a prestigious position at a Boston law firm immediately after graduating from law school, and our mother never missed an opportunity to contrast his success with my apparent failure. She would ask pointed questions about my living situation, employment status, and financial stability in front of relatives and family friends, clearly hoping to highlight the difference between her successful son and her disappointing one. During Thanksgiving dinner that first year after college, Derek brought his new girlfriend Amanda, a fellow lawyer who drove a luxury sedan and wore designer clothes that cost more than my monthly income. As Derek described his recent promotion and salary increase, our mother beamed with pride and asked detailed questions about his career trajectory and future plans. When the conversation eventually turned to me, I tried explaining our software development project and the potential we saw in the legal technology market. Derek interrupted with condescending laughter, asking why any serious law firm would trust critical business operations to a program created by 2 guys working out of a garage. His girlfriend nodded in agreement, clearly viewing me as the family disappointment who refused to get a real job. The humiliation reached its peak when our mother suggested that I consider applying for entry-level positions at established companies instead of pursuing what she called my hobby project. She recommended that Derek help me find openings in the mailroom or filing department at his firm, since my computer skills might be useful for basic data entry tasks. That night, lying on an air mattress in Jake's grandmother's basement, I made a promise to myself that I would prove them wrong regardless of how long it took or how much sacrifice was required. Their dismissal and mockery became the fuel that drove me to work 18-hour days and pursue every possible opportunity to grow our business. The breakthrough came 8 months later when Jake's persistence finally earned us a meeting with a small law firm in Worcester. The managing partner, Robert Chen, was frustrated with his current case management system and willing to try our software on a trial basis. We offered to implement our program for free for 3 months in exchange for detailed feedback and a written testimonial if he was satisfied with the results. Within 6 weeks, the firm's efficiency had improved so dramatically that Robert offered to pay us $5,000 per month for continued access to our software. More importantly, he introduced us to 3 other firms that were experiencing similar frustrations with their existing systems. By the end of our second year in business, we had 12 clients and monthly revenue of $60,000. The irony was not lost on me when Derek's firm contacted us about upgrading their case management system. They had heard about our software through professional networks and wanted to schedule a demonstration. Derek had no idea that the company revolutionizing his workplace efficiency was the same garage startup he had mocked at family dinners. By our 3rd year in operation, Jake and I had moved our company into a proper office space in downtown Springfield. We employed 15 full-time developers, 3 sales representatives, and 2 customer service specialists. Our client base had grown to include 47 law firms across New England, and we were generating monthly revenue exceeding $200,000. Despite our rapid growth and increasing recognition within the legal technology industry, I made a deliberate decision to keep my success private from my family. The pain of their constant dismissal and mockery had created a defensive wall that I was not ready to lower. I wanted to see how far their disrespect would go before I revealed the truth about what I had accomplished. Family gatherings continued to follow the same predictable pattern. Derek would dominate conversations with stories about his latest courtroom victories, salary increases, and professional accolades. Our mother would hang on his every word, asking follow-up questions and sharing updates about his achievements with anyone who would listen. When attention occasionally turned to me, I would deflect with vague references to my consulting work and software development projects. Derek's firm had become one of our largest clients by this point, paying us $12,000 per month for our comprehensive case management system. The software I had designed was directly responsible for improving their productivity by 40% and reducing their administrative costs by $30,000 annually. Derek regularly praised the new system during family dinners, completely unaware that his despised younger brother was the creative mind behind the technology that was advancing his career. The disconnect became surreal during our mother's 60th birthday celebration. Derek gave a speech praising her guidance and support throughout his professional development. He specifically mentioned how the new case management system at his firm had helped him handle larger caseloads and impress senior partners with his organizational efficiency. He credited his success to the strong work ethic and attention to detail that our mother had instilled in him from childhood. I sat at the back of the restaurant watching him receive applause for accomplishments that were actually built on the foundation of my software design. Our mother glowed with pride as Derek described his bright future prospects and potential partnership track at the firm. When she asked me to say a few words about her influence on my life, I kept my remarks brief and generic, knowing that any mention of my actual achievements would be met with skepticism or dismissed as exaggeration. The gifts I gave our mother during this period were expensive, but carefully chosen to avoid revealing my financial situation. I bought her a high-end laptop computer, explaining that I had received a discount through my consulting work. For Christmas, I purchased a luxury spa weekend package, claiming it was a group gift that I had organized with Derek. She accepted these presents with polite thanks, but never showed the same enthusiasm she displayed when Derek gave her flowers or took her to dinner. Her dismissive attitude became even more pronounced after Derek got engaged to Amanda. The wedding planning consumed months of family conversations with our mother, involving herself in every detail from venue selection to menu planning. She frequently commented on how proud she was to have such a successful son who could afford an elaborate celebration and provide well for his future family. During one particularly painful conversation, she suggested that I should focus on finding a stable job with benefits rather than continuing what she called my computer hobby. She worried that my lack of traditional employment would make it difficult for me to attract a serious girlfriend or start a family. Her concern was supposedly motivated by love, but the underlying message was clear. She viewed my chosen path as a dead end that would lead to loneliness and financial instability. The breaking point came during a family dinner celebrating Derek's promotion to senior associate. As he described the additional responsibilities and salary increase that came with his new position, our mother asked detailed questions about his career timeline and partnership prospects. She was particularly interested in his financial progress and retirement planning, clearly proud of his ability to provide security for his future family. When the conversation turned to me, I mentioned that my business was growing and that we had recently signed several new clients. Instead of showing interest or asking for details, our mother immediately launched into a lecture about the importance of stable employment and predictable income. She suggested that I should consider applying for positions at established technology companies where I could receive health insurance, vacation time, and other traditional benefits. Her lecture continued for nearly 10 minutes, covering topics from retirement savings to the challenges of maintaining client relationships as an independent consultant. Derek nodded in agreement throughout her speech, occasionally adding his own advice about the importance of working for reputable organizations with established track records. That evening, I drove home to my newly purchased condominium overlooking the Connecticut River. The 3-bedroom unit had cost me $450,000, which I'd paid in cash from our company's profits. Standing on my balcony looking out at the city lights below, I realized that my family's inability to see my worth had nothing to do with my actual achievements and everything to do with their predetermined expectations and biases. I overheard the conversation that finally convinced me to reveal everything during Derek's engagement party. Our mother was speaking with Mrs. Patterson, her longtime neighbor and friend, about her son's different career paths. She explained that Derek was thriving as a lawyer with excellent prospects for partnership, while I was still struggling to find direction in life. She expressed hope that I would eventually settle down and pursue more conventional employment instead of chasing unrealistic dreams in the technology field. Mrs. Patterson asked about my current work, and our mother described me as a freelance computer consultant who worked on small projects for local businesses. She painted a picture of someone who was technically capable, but lacked the ambition and discipline necessary for significant professional success. The conversation took place just 15 feet from where I was standing, but our mother spoke as if I was not present or could not hear her assessment of my life. That same week, our company reached a major milestone when our monthly revenue exceeded $1 million for the first time. We'd grown to employ 53 people across 3 office locations, and venture capital firms were beginning to express serious interest in acquisition opportunities. The contrast between my actual success and my family's perception of my failure had become so extreme that I knew the time had come to set the record straight. The acquisition offer came during our 4th year of operation, just as our company was experiencing explosive growth throughout the Northeast legal market. A major technology corporation had been monitoring our progress for 18 months and decided that our case management software represented the future of legal practice efficiency. Their initial proposal was for $85 million, which would have set both Jake and me up financially for the rest of our lives. However, the negotiations stretched over 6 months as we worked through complex details involving employee retention, intellectual property rights, and integration timelines. During this period, I made the difficult decision to distance myself from family events while focusing on what could be the most important business decision of my life. I missed Derek's bachelor party, citing work obligations that I could not reschedule. I skipped our mother's book club anniversary celebration, claiming that I had committed to a client presentation on the same weekend. Each absence was met with disappointed sighs and passive-aggressive comments about my priorities and reliability, but I needed space to think clearly without the constant stress of family judgment. The breaking point came at Derek's engagement party, held at an upscale country club overlooking the Berkshire Mountains. The guest list included partners from his law firm, college friends, and extended family members who had traveled from across the country to celebrate. Derek looked confident and successful in his tailored suit, moving through the crowd like a politician working a campaign event. I arrived late after a crucial conference call with our acquisition team and immediately felt underdressed in my casual business attire. Our mother had clearly spent considerable effort organizing the event, from the elaborate flower arrangements to the professionally catered dinner service. She moved through the party with obvious pride, introducing Derek and Amanda to various guests and sharing stories about their courtship and career successes. When I approached to congratulate Derek, he was in the middle of describing his recent promotion and increased responsibilities to a group of his law firm colleagues. He mentioned how the new case management system at his office had revolutionized their workflow and allowed him to handle much larger caseloads with greater efficiency. Several partners nodded in agreement, praising the technology upgrade that had improved their entire organization's productivity. As Derek continued his explanation, I realized he was essentially giving me a detailed review of my own software without knowing that I had designed every feature he was describing. The irony was overwhelming. My brother was building his professional reputation on the foundation of my creative work, while simultaneously viewing me as a disappointment who lacked direction and ambition. The moment that changed everything came when our mother approached with Amanda's mother, Eleanor, who had driven up from New York for the celebration. Sarah introduced me as her other son, who was still figuring out his career path, explaining that I worked with computers, but had not yet settled into a permanent position with an established company. Eleanor, trying to be polite, asked about my specific work and whether I enjoyed the technology field. Before I could respond, our mother jumped in with an explanation that I did consulting work for small businesses, but was hoping to find full-time employment with a larger organization that could provide better stability and benefits. The conversation continued for several minutes, with our mother essentially presenting me as a well-meaning but unsuccessful young man who had not yet learned how to channel his technical skills into meaningful career advancement. Eleanor nodded sympathetically, clearly viewing me as someone who needed guidance and encouragement, rather than recognition for actual achievements. Amanda joined the conversation at this point, mentioning that Derek's law firm had recently upgraded to an amazing new software system that had transformed their daily operations. She gushed about how impressed the partners were with Derek's ability to master the new technology and use it to improve his case management efficiency. Our mother beamed with pride as Amanda described Derek's technological aptitude and professional growth. Standing there listening to them praise my brother for his skill in using software that I had designed felt like being congratulated for appreciating my own artwork. The absurdity of the situation was compounded by the genuine admiration in their voices and their complete ignorance of the reality they were describing. Later that evening, as the party was winding down, I overheard a conversation between our mother and Derek's former law school roommate that finally convinced me to reveal everything at the next family gathering. They were discussing Derek's bright future prospects and his ability to provide well for Amanda and their eventual children. Our mother mentioned that she wished I could follow Derek's example and pursue a more traditional career path that would lead to financial security and professional respect. She worried that my freelance consulting work would never provide the stability necessary for a successful adult life, and she hoped that Derek's success might inspire me to make better choices about my future. The conversation revealed the depth of her misunderstanding about my actual situation and confirmed that no amount of subtle hints or indirect evidence would change her perception of my capabilities. She had constructed a narrative about my failures that was so deeply embedded in her worldview that only a dramatic revelation could shatter her preconceptions and force her to confront the truth about what I'd accomplished. 2 weeks later, our acquisition deal was finalized for $160 million. Jake and I celebrated with our employees at a restaurant overlooking Boston Harbor, toasting 4 years of incredibly hard work and dedication that had culminated in success beyond our wildest dreams. As I looked around the table at the talented people who had helped build our company from a garage startup into a major player in the legal technology market, I knew that the time had come to share the truth with my family. The months following our acquisition provided the perfect opportunity to observe my family's true nature without the pressure of defending my choices or explaining my work. With the deal completed and my financial future secured, I decided to conduct one final test of their capacity for growth and understanding before revealing the magnitude of what I had accomplished. I began dropping subtle hints about business success during our weekly phone conversations and monthly family dinners. I mentioned signing new clients, expanding our team, and receiving recognition from industry publications. Each revelation was met with polite disinterest or gentle skepticism, as if I was describing minor accomplishments that barely registered on their scale of meaningful achievement. During one particularly telling conversation, I explained that our software had been featured in a national legal technology magazine as one of the year's most innovative products. Our mother responded by suggesting that I should use this recognition to apply for positions at larger, more established companies where my skills might be better appreciated and compensated. Derek's reaction was even more dismissive. He claimed that most legal technology publications were essentially marketing platforms that featured any company willing to pay advertising fees. He implied that our recognition was purchased rather than earned, completely ignoring the detailed article that described our competitive advantages and client testimonials. The breaking point came when our mother asked me to help Derek move from his apartment to a larger place he was renting in preparation for his upcoming wedding. She assumed that I would have flexible scheduling and free time during weekdays since my consulting work obviously did not require the same commitment as Derek's demanding legal career. I agreed to help with the move, curious to see Derek's lifestyle and financial situation up close. His new apartment was impressive, a 2-bedroom unit in a luxury complex with granite countertops, hardwood floors, and a private balcony overlooking a golf course. The monthly rent was $4,000, which represented a significant upgrade from his previous housing. While loading boxes into the moving truck, I noticed several financial documents scattered on Derek's desk: credit card statements, student loan payment schedules, and a detailed budget spreadsheet that revealed the reality behind his successful facade. Despite his impressive salary and professional advancement, Derek was carrying over $200,000 in law school debt and struggling to maintain the lifestyle necessary to project success in his competitive field. His monthly expenses exceeded his income by nearly $800, forcing him to rely on credit cards and family assistance to cover the difference. The luxury apartment, expensive suits, and elaborate engagement party were all financed through borrowed money and careful financial management rather than genuine prosperity. The discovery was shocking, not because Derek was struggling financially, but because our family had built their assessment of his success on superficial markers rather than actual achievement. His impressive salary was offset by massive educational debt and living expenses that left him with virtually no disposable income or savings. Meanwhile, I was quietly sitting on a personal net worth exceeding $100 million, while being viewed as the family disappointment who needed guidance and support. The contrast was so extreme that it felt like living in an alternate reality where all logic and reason had been suspended. The most devastating revelation came when I discovered documents showing that our mother had been providing Derek with monthly financial assistance of $1,500 to help him maintain his lifestyle while he worked toward partnership at his firm. She was essentially subsidizing his success while criticizing my choices and expressing concern about my financial stability. Even more painful was finding a letter she had written to our aunt describing Derek's bright prospects and my concerning lack of direction. The letter, dated just 3 months earlier, painted a picture of 2 sons heading in opposite directions, one toward partnership at a prestigious law firm, the other toward an uncertain future as a freelance consultant who refused to accept the stability of traditional employment. The letter included specific details about her attempts to guide me toward better decision-making, including suggestions about companies where I should apply and advice about the importance of building a professional network. She described her frustration with my stubbornness and my unwillingness to accept help from Derek, who had offered to introduce me to contacts in the legal field who might need basic technology support. Reading that letter while standing in Derek's apartment surrounded by evidence of his financial struggles and our mother's efforts to support his lifestyle, I realized that their treatment of me was not based on actual circumstances, but on deeply embedded assumptions about worth, success, and family dynamics that had nothing to do with reality. The final test came during a family dinner celebrating Derek's confirmation as a senior associate at his firm. Our mother had prepared his favorite meal and invited our aunt and uncle to share in the celebration. Derek spent the evening describing his increased responsibilities, his growing client base, and his optimistic projections for achieving partnership within the next 5 years. When our uncle asked about my work, I mentioned that our company had recently completed a major project that had received positive feedback from clients and industry reviewers. Instead of showing interest in the details, Derek immediately launched into a lecture about the difference between small consulting projects and meaningful career advancement. He explained that while freelance work might provide temporary income, it could never offer the security, prestige, or long-term growth potential available through traditional employment with established organizations. Our mother nodded in agreement, adding that she hoped I would eventually recognize the wisdom in Derek's advice and pursue opportunities that would lead to genuine professional success. That conversation taking place just weeks after I had become one of the youngest self-made millionaires in Massachusetts convinced me that my family's capacity for understanding and growth was permanently limited by their inability to see beyond their own preconceptions and biases. The time had come to reveal everything and let them confront the reality of what they had missed, while focusing exclusively on superficial markers of achievement. Christmas Eve dinner began exactly as I had expected. Our dining room table was set with our mother's finest china and crystal glasses, creating an elegant backdrop for what had become an annual ritual of family hierarchy and selective attention. Derek sat at the head of the table like a conquering hero, his wife Amanda beside him, glowing with the confidence that comes from being married to the family's golden child. Our mother Sarah bustled between the kitchen and dining room, ensuring that every detail of the meal met her exacting standards. She had spent 3 days preparing Derek's favorite dishes: herb-crusted prime rib truffle, mashed potatoes, and roasted vegetables that she had selected from the premium section of the local market. The effort she invested in creating the perfect celebration for Derek stood in stark contrast to the casual attention she paid to my presence at the table. As we settled in for dinner, Derek immediately launched into his latest professional triumph, winning a complex litigation case that had brought significant recognition to his firm. He described the months of preparation, the strategic brilliance of his arguments, and the substantial settlement his client had received. Our mother hung on every word, asking detailed questions about the case and expressing amazement at his legal expertise. Amanda contributed her own stories about Derek's growing reputation among senior partners and the increasing likelihood of his promotion to partner within the next 18 months. She painted a picture of a rising star whose future seemed limitless, whose success reflected not only his own talents, but also the excellent upbringing he had received from our devoted mother. The conversation continued for nearly an hour, covering Derek's recent salary increase, his growing client base, and his plans for expanding their social circle within the legal community. Our mother beamed with pride as they discussed purchasing a larger home in an exclusive neighborhood and their hopes for starting a family within the next few years. When attention finally turned to me, the shift in energy was palpable. The enthusiastic questions and genuine interest that had characterized their discussion of Derek's achievements were replaced by polite but superficial inquiries about my general well-being. Our mother asked about my health, my living situation, and whether I was staying busy with my consulting work. I responded with deliberately vague answers, explaining that business had been good and that I had been working on several interesting projects. I mentioned that our software had been gaining recognition in the legal technology market and that we had recently completed some significant client implementations. Derek's reaction was immediate and predictable. He chuckled dismissively and asked what kind of recognition a small consulting operation could possibly receive in a field dominated by major corporations with million-dollar marketing budgets. He suggested that I might be confusing polite client feedback with genuine industry acclaim, implying that my perspective on our company's success was colored by inexperience and wishful thinking. Our mother joined the conversation with what she clearly viewed as helpful guidance. She suggested that I should leverage any positive feedback from clients to apply for positions with larger, more established technology companies. She worried that my freelance work, while temporarily satisfying, could never provide the stability and growth opportunities available through traditional corporate employment. The condescension in their voices was overwhelming. They spoke to me as if I was a naive child who needed protection from his own unrealistic expectations and poor decision-making. Their concern was supposedly motivated by love, but the underlying message was unmistakable. They viewed my chosen path as a dead end that would inevitably lead to disappointment and failure. As Derek began describing his recent Christmas bonus and the vacation to Europe that it would fund, I realized that this conversation represented the perfect opportunity to reveal everything. The contrast between their perception of my situation and the reality of my achievements had reached such an extreme that only complete honesty could bridge the gap. I waited for a natural pause in Derek's description of his firm's holiday party before mentioning casually that I had some news to share about my business. The transition was so smooth that they barely noticed the shift in conversation topic. I explained that we had recently completed a major transaction that would significantly change our company's future direction. Derek continued eating his prime rib, while asking absent-mindedly what kind of transaction a small consulting firm could possibly complete that would have meaningful implications for future growth. His tone suggested that he was humoring me rather than expressing genuine curiosity about my announcement. When I mentioned that we had sold our company, Derek actually laughed out loud. He set down his fork and looked at me with the same expression he might use when listening to a child describe an imaginary friend. He asked how much money I thought a garage startup could possibly bring in a legitimate business transaction. The moment had finally arrived. 4 years of condescension dismissal and systematic underestimation were about to be exposed for what they truly were. I looked directly at Derek and said quietly that the sale price had been $160 million. The silence that followed was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Derek's jaw dropped open so suddenly that I worried he might choke on his food. Amanda's fork clattered against her plate as her hand went limp with shock. Our mother's face drained of color so completely that she looked like she might faint. For nearly 30 seconds, nobody moved or spoke. The only sound in the room was the gentle ticking of our grandfather clock and the distant hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. The Christmas tree lights continued to twinkle in the corner, but the festive atmosphere had been completely transformed by the weight of my revelation. Derek was the first to break the silence, stammering out a question about whether I was serious or making some kind of elaborate joke. His voice cracked with disbelief as he asked for clarification about the number I'd mentioned. When I confirmed that our company had indeed sold for $160 million, he slumped back in his chair like someone who had just received devastating news. Our mother's reaction was even more dramatic. She gripped the edge of the table with both hands and stared at me with an expression that combined shock, confusion, and something that looked almost like fear. She asked in a whisper whether I was telling the truth, as if speaking too loudly might shatter whatever fragile reality she was trying to construct around my words. The questions that followed came in a confused rush. Derek wanted to know how long our company had been generating significant revenue. Amanda asked about the number of employees we had hired and the scope of our operations. Our mother demanded details about our clients and the specific services that had justified such an enormous valuation. As I began explaining the 4-year journey from garage startup to major acquisition, I watched their expressions shift from disbelief to amazement to something approaching horror. They were beginning to realize not just what I had accomplished, but how completely they had misunderstood and underestimated every aspect of my professional life. The most shocking revelation was still to come. When Derek asked about our client base and the types of organizations that used our software, I smiled and mentioned that his own law firm had been one of our largest and most satisfied customers for over 2 years. The case management system that he had praised throughout dinner, the technology that had helped him handle larger caseloads and impress senior partners, had been designed and developed by the brother he had spent years mocking as a failure. Derek's face went through a series of expressions as he processed this information: confusion, recognition, embarrassment, and finally something that looked like shame. He realized that his professional success had been built on the foundation of my creative work, that the achievements he had been celebrating were actually testimonials to my capabilities and vision. The days following Christmas dinner were unlike anything our family had ever experienced. The revelation had shattered decades of established dynamics and forced everyone to confront the reality of their assumptions, biases, and treatment of me throughout my adult life. The process was painful, but ultimately necessary for any hope of building healthier relationships moving forward. Derek was the first to reach out, calling me 3 days after Christmas, with a vulnerability in his voice that I had never heard before. He apologized not just for his recent behavior, but for years of condescension and dismissive treatment that he was finally beginning to understand had been completely unjustified. He asked if we could meet for coffee to have a conversation that was long overdue. We spent 4 hours at a quiet cafe in downtown Springfield, talking through our childhood dynamics, our different paths to success, and the ways that family expectations had shaped both of our choices. Derek admitted that his confidence and achievements had always felt fragile, requiring constant validation and comparison to others to maintain his sense of worth. He had used my struggles as a way to elevate himself, never realizing that my apparent failures were actually the foundation for extraordinary success. He also revealed something that surprised me. He had always felt envious of my creativity and technical skills, even while dismissing them publicly. He confessed that his choice to pursue law had been motivated partly by a desire to find a field where he could succeed without competing directly with my natural abilities. The irony that his professional success had become dependent on my software was not lost on either of us. Our conversation led to a broader discussion about the financial pressures he had been facing and his fears about maintaining the lifestyle that his career demanded. I offered to help him restructure his debt and create a more sustainable approach to his expenses, which led to one of the most honest conversations we had ever had as brothers. Our mother's journey toward understanding was more complex and took considerably longer. The initial shock of my revelation gave way to a period of defensive rationalization where she tried to minimize the significance of my success by focusing on the risks and uncertainties of entrepreneurship. She worried that my wealth was temporary or somehow less meaningful than traditional career advancement through established institutions. However, as details about the acquisition became public through industry publications and local news coverage, she was forced to confront the magnitude of what I had accomplished. The recognition from business journals, the interviews with technology reporters, and the respect shown by other entrepreneurs in our community made it impossible for her to dismiss my achievements as lucky accidents or temporary successes. The breakthrough in our relationship came during a private conversation 6 weeks after Christmas. She visited my condominium for the first time and was clearly impressed by the quality of my living situation and the evidence of thoughtful financial management throughout my home. We spent the afternoon looking through articles and awards that documented our company's growth and recognition within the legal technology industry. As she read testimonials from clients and reviews from industry experts, I could see her gradually accepting the reality of what she had missed while focusing exclusively on traditional markers of success. She began to understand that her assessment of my capabilities had been limited by her own narrow definition of achievement and professional respectability. The most emotional moment came when she found a framed letter from the CEO of Derek's law firm thanking our company for revolutionizing their practice management and specifically praising the innovation and user-friendly design of our software. She realized that Derek's professional advancement had been supported by my creative work, and that her pride in his achievements was actually a testament to my capabilities. Her apology was heartfelt and comprehensive. She acknowledged that her treatment of me had been influenced by her own fears about unconventional career paths and her inability to understand the potential of the technology industry. She admitted that her learning disability had made her doubt my intelligence and capabilities, even when evidence suggested otherwise. Most importantly, she promised to approach our relationship with a completely open mind and genuine respect for my choices and achievements. The process of rebuilding our family relationships required months of honest conversation and conscious effort from everyone involved. We established new patterns of communication that valued different types of success and recognized the unique contributions that each of us brought to the family dynamic. Derek and I began collaborating on projects that combined his legal expertise with my technology background, creating opportunities for mutual support rather than competition. Our mother became one of my strongest advocates, sharing news about my achievements with the same enthusiasm she had previously reserved for Derek's accomplishments. She began attending technology conferences and entrepreneur meetups to better understand my industry and the broader impact of innovation on society. The changes in our relationships extended beyond immediate family to include our extended network of relatives and family friends. Our mother took responsibility for correcting the false narratives she had shared about my career and academic achievements, ensuring that everyone understood the reality of my success and professional recognition. I used my financial resources to establish a scholarship program for students with learning disabilities who were pursuing careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The program provided not just financial assistance, but also mentoring and support services designed to help students overcome the academic and social challenges that had shaped my own educational experience. Working with education professionals and learning disability specialists, we created a comprehensive support system that addressed both the practical obstacles and emotional difficulties faced by students who learn differently than their peers. The scholarship recipients reminded me of my own struggles and inspired me to continue expanding the program's reach and impact. Derek became actively involved in the scholarship program, using his legal skills to help establish the foundation and ensure that our resources were managed effectively and ethically. Our collaboration on this project strengthened our relationship and gave him a meaningful way to contribute to something larger than his individual career advancement. The program's success led to speaking engagements at schools and conferences where I shared my story with students, parents, and educators. These presentations became opportunities to challenge assumptions about learning disabilities and demonstrate the potential for different types of intelligence to lead to extraordinary achievements. Through this work, I discovered that my experience of being underestimated and dismissed was shared by countless other individuals who had succeeded despite rather than because of the support they received from family and educational institutions. The scholarship program became a platform for changing perceptions and creating more inclusive definitions of intelligence and achievement. 1 year after the Christmas revelation, our family celebrated the holidays with a completely transformed dynamic. Derek and Amanda hosted dinner at their new home, which they had purchased with help from a financial planning strategy I had developed for them. Our mother brought her boyfriend Richard, a retired engineer who appreciated both traditional professional success and entrepreneurial innovation. The conversation that evening covered Derek's growing reputation as a lawyer who understood technology, our mother's volunteer work with the Scholarship Foundation, and my plans for investing in other startups founded by entrepreneurs from underrepresented backgrounds. Instead of focusing exclusively on individual achievements, we discussed how our different skills and experiences could be combined to create positive impact in our community. The contrast with previous family gatherings was striking. Rather than competing for attention or validation, we were collaborating on projects that utilized everyone's strengths and contributed to goals larger than personal advancement. The scholarship program had become a family enterprise that gave all of us meaningful ways to use our resources and abilities to help others overcome similar challenges. As I reflected on the journey from that garage startup to the present moment, I realized that the greatest victory was not the financial success or industry recognition, but the transformation of relationships that had seemed permanently damaged by misunderstanding and neglect. The process had required courage, patience, and a willingness to risk further rejection in pursuit of authentic connection. The life lesson that emerged from this experience was that true success cannot be measured simply by external achievements or financial accumulation. The most meaningful victories come from staying true to your values and vision, even when others doubt your choices, and from finding the strength to build genuine relationships with people who are willing to grow and change alongside you. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the freedom to stop seeking validation from people who are unwilling or unable to see your worth. But when those people are family members who are capable of growth and genuine change, the effort to rebuild those relationships can lead to connections deeper and more meaningful than what existed before. My company's success had given me financial security and professional recognition, but watching my family learn to appreciate different types of achievement and collaborate on projects that helped others was the accomplishment that truly changed my life. The boy who had felt invisible and dismissed had become a man whose story inspired others to pursue their dreams, despite the doubts and limitations imposed by people who claimed to love them. Looking back, I understood that every rejection and dismissal had strengthened my determination to prove not just that they were wrong about my potential, but that their narrow definition of success had prevented them from recognizing the extraordinary possibilities that exist when intelligence, creativity, and persistence are combined with the courage to pursue unconventional paths. The scholarship recipients who visited our family gatherings reminded us all that success comes in many forms, and that the most important achievements are often accomplished by people who refuse to accept other people's limitations as permanent truths about their own capabilities and potential. Have you ever felt underestimated by the people closest to you? How did you handle the challenge of pursuing your dreams while dealing with doubt from family or friends? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more inspiring tales of overcoming adversity and achieving success against the odds. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that their worth is not determined by other people's ability to recognize their potential. Thank you for listening, and remember that your greatest achievements often begin in the moments when others believe in you the least.